what makes a person creative or innovative or a great problem solver? In other words, what makes you people what you are? Because I assume most of you are great problem solvers, innovators, and creators. This is really a fundamental, even transformative question. Is it something in your genes or a skill that you can learn? And this is the question that I and the founders of the Agastya Foundation asked when we started our foundation back in 1999. And we concluded that great problem solvers, innovators, are great observers. They use all their senses, the eyes, the ears, the tactile sense, taste, whatever. They pick up things that most of us ignore or forget. Observation. The second is they experiment and discover. So we all don't know the answer to most of the questions. So you have to experiment, you have to try out things, right? Great experimenters and discoverers. And they develop the ability to associate, in other words, connect dots that appear not to be connected. Obviously, to do that, you have to have a lot of dots. And to have a lot of dots, you have to experiment and try out things and make those unusual connections, if and when you do that. And finally, they act. They apply the insight they've gained from this process to create something of value. And we said all of this is based on the foundation of curiosity, asking questions. Because if you don't ask questions, you're not going to observe, you're not going to discover, experiment, whatever. And unfortunately, the education system actually discourages questioning, doesn't encourage questioning. And of course, finally, you have to be motivated to ask questions. So we said that's the kind of thing: questioning, observing, experimenting, discovering, associating, and making it happen. And guess what? 10, 15 years later, Clayton Christensen and a bunch of people from the Harvard Business School and UC Berkeley wrote a book. They called these things discovery skills. And they said it's these skills that actually differentiate the greatest entrepreneurs from the rest. So think about it. So today we have two fascinating speakers with two very different stories. Angad Daryani, who's just 24 years old. And I was telling him during the break that some of his insights, which he's gained in his early 20s, I gained in my early 40s. So hats off to you, Angad. And Angad describes himself as a mission-oriented, deep tech entrepreneur. The second speaker, equally fascinating, actually studied under a lantern in a village, ended up in IIT Kanpur, and now is one of the co-founders of a fascinating company called Ishitva, Sandeep Singh. And Sandeep also has an expansive vision. He wants India to become the most advanced waste management ecosystem in the world. So both Angad and Sandeep are focused on something that is driving the zeitgeist of the world: climate change. Now, you may agree with it or disagree with the extent of climate change. If you were living in Pakistan, you kind of feel it in a very, very visceral way. But I'm sure we feel it if you're living in Delhi or any of the big cities, including Bombay. You actually breathe it. Angad says you breathe 22,000 times a day. So what are you breathing in? It relates to life in its very fundamental ways. So both these guys are addressing these problems in magnificently original ways. So I'd like to leave it there and invite young Angad to tell his story to all of you. Thank you.
I think Ramji really sells extremely well, but My name's Angad. I'm the founder and CEO of a deep tech startup called Pran. We operate between the Bay Area and Mumbai. And let's see. Okay, great. So I grew up in Mumbai, went to a state board school, and growing up, I'd come back from school during lunchtime and sit at that window with my mom and look at the different birds and animals outside from the window. And growing up, I developed this fascination towards animal watching, National Geographic, Discovery Channel, and others. But I think your generation and people before you grew up with the promise of an exciting future, that if you grow up, work hard, go to school, the future is going to be great. But my generations and the generations after grew up with a slightly different promise, the promise of a bleak future where animals are extinct, the air is polluted, climate change is real, and so on. And that's not a very exciting future to wake up to and work hard towards every day. So growing up, it built this irritation in me as to, if these problems are solvable, why aren't people solving it? And it seems like we're running into oblivion, ignoring the things that matter the most. And growing up, I built this fascination towards building things. So I'd build all different kinds of hardware projects, small solar boards, automated gardening systems, 3D printers, and so on. And as I learned to build things, my discomfort continued to grow. That many of these problems that we speak of are so solvable, but why aren't actually people solving them at scale? It seems like a great economic opportunity. And so that fascination towards building things around 9th grade pushed me to drop out of school, and I started open schooling and building things on my own. And when I dropped out, I experienced something very dangerous, which is thriving under autonomy, where there was no system governing my education, but there was constant learning through innovation. I worked briefly with the MIT Media Lab for 2.5 years for the India Initiative, got the opportunity to present and pitch to several leaders in our country, and then later went back to college and studied electrical engineering at Georgia Tech. So when I went to Georgia Tech, again, that discomfort stayed with me. So I was building electric cars. I worked on large energy storage systems with lithium-ion batteries. And during that time, in 2017, started to work on what became my startup, Pran. We bootstrapped it for around 4.5 years. And in the entire climate spectrum, we said, what is the problem that affects people the most today, immediately, which is something they'd want to pay for? And that was the air pollution problem, where there's 7 million people who lose their lives every year to air pollution. 1 million students couldn't go to school last year as well as this year in Delhi because of air pollution. I didn't really remember not being able to go to school because of air pollution. It's absurd. And then there's more than 250 million vehicles in India. So converting all of them to electric will at least take a decade. And as Ramji mentioned, we breathe 22,000 times a day. How come we don't put much thought into it? We put a lot of thought into what we eat 3-4 times a day. So for very long, I waited on others to do something. Most of the solutions that we were seeing were always around the software and the SaaS space, because that was low risk and something people were most excited about. And the solutions that we saw most were masks and nasal filters, these anti-smog guns, and these singular smog towers. If you just approached it from a physics perspective, you'd understand why several of these are not scalable solutions. Even if I put a jet engine inside that smog tower, I can't pull air from 2 kilometers away, let alone purify it. So those ranges never made sense. And what we realized is the air pollution problem is extremely nuanced, because there's fundamentally infinite sources of these particulates. They're almost invisible. There's millions of them in this room and you don't see it. There's so many different types of materials of these pollutants. There's all this fear and misinformation around air pollution, so no one really wants to get into it. And there's no aspirational technology. Many of us spoke of Tesla because the car was aspirational, the founder was aspirational. There was no such thing happening in the air pollution and carbon capture space. So we said, let's take this incredibly hard problem and then make it harder for ourselves by saying we want to solve this problem at scale. So we're going to build technology that's filterless, which means there's no maintenance involved in owning this technology. We have to make it low cost so that it scales and everyone can adopt it. The product has to be aspirational and futuristic, and people need to want to talk to their friends about owning it. And we have to scale it without government support. It should need no new infrastructure, so it should fit into the built world, and it needs to be intelligent and weatherproof. And lastly, because we don't really like ourselves that much, we said we're going to make it in India and figure out how to get that Apple-esque quality making it in India. So when we started off, we said we bootstrapped it for a while, and we did it without any investor money. My investor was my father, whom I used to take smaller sums of money from. He's here. We built it in park benches, borrowing people's cars in the US to do different kinds of testing. We couldn't get an incubator access when I was in college, so we built our own over the weekend and deployed it at Emory and Stanford, asking bio students to do tests. That's my room, and that's the living room of a friend that we built Pran out of in Atlanta. And what we realized through this journey is that, sure, we didn't have $30 million, which we would technically need to hit these milestones as per Bay Area metrics, but people build companies. So if we were able to arrange some incredibly smart people and like-minded people in a room, we'd be able to build our technologies at solely the cost of the hardware, which was few $1,000s. So what started with me alone grew to around 250 people around the world, from Tesla, Apple, SpaceX, who are really aligned with our mission, volunteering their time to help make this dream a reality. So this company was built by people, not by money. And this team was really driven, so people really liked working at Pran and continue to even today. Like, I get a message on Sunday saying I'm missing office, and this is after people have worked till midnight the previous night in office. So it was very rewarding to see. And in 2020, I graduated from college. I was sort of forced to come back to India mid-semester because of COVID. And then in that time, I previously just pooled together $1.3 million in seed financing, which had fallen apart as soon as COVID hit. So just when the wires and documents were supposed to happen, that fell apart. So I came back to India in a lockdown with no money. The air pollution problem had disappeared because of the lockdowns. No one was really thinking about it. But we got people from 30 cities around the world. We worked 7 time zones, and we built a hardware company remotely, right? Which is sort of unheard of for devices this size. They're almost 6-7 feet tall in height. So in that journey, I also got the experience to swim with sharks, as I call it. We went through several rounds of financing, grants, so on. Many fell apart till eventually Peter Thiel and Mark Anderson's fund led our round through social impact capital, and that really changed the compass for us. And 24 months into it, we're backed by some of the best people in the world. Some are sitting here today, and so very excited to be able to share this. And companies like Microsoft, ANSYS, Accenture, Autodesk have really accelerated the deployment for the technologies that we're building. And so, like I said, we're trying to use the best of both worlds, and we're making it all in India. So 95% of our product is sourced and manufactured right outside of Mumbai in the Vasai area. And we said we want to have that Apple-esque quality, because people say in India, khali dabba banana aata hai, so we want to change that thought process. So very, very particular about manufacturing. And here's the product we end up building. It's the world's most advanced filterless large space air purification system. And it costs less than ₹1 per person per day to afford it. And so do you want to see it work? Because it's filterless. Do filterless technologies even work? And so I got a tiny video from our lab long back in Mumbai. So we're introducing these smoke bombs into this bubble, just like Tesla did, but we doubled the size of the tent, and we said we'll do it without filters. So you'll see our device get turned on in just under 30 minutes. It's cleaned out just over 1,200 square feet and up to a 10 feet height. So you'll see the bubble get lighter, the particles get collected in the device. I think the most exciting part is that we've already started deploying. These are some pictures from earlier this year. Right now we're servicing some of the larger steel companies and refractories in the country who have a dust issue and compliance issue within their factories. And we continue to build on. So that was Mark 1. We have Mark 2. We have our carbon capture systems, Hive, which is indoor, biotiles, and our sensor platform, which enables us to track it very accurately, all built here in Mumbai. So I was asked to summarize my learnings over the last few years to make it most relevant to this crowd. And I think the things that matter the most were these. Is that building mission-driven companies is really an unparalleled experience. It excites some of the smartest people in the world towards you. And then as we invest and build in deep tech, for first few years we don't see anything, but suddenly you've built exponential value should you be able to actually deliver on your promise. And we're always scared of manufacturing, saying don't get into it, it's a headache. But it gives us tremendous control over our supply chain, timelines, and also there's no real issue of dead stock for most of the times. And everyone shies away from hardware. It's all SaaS focused, great returns, exponential returns, but I think hardware is where the real value is built. We build software as well, but it supplements our hardware, because I think stories don't solve problems, actual solutions solve problems. Software is telling you the story. So yeah, I think climate is the greatest opportunity of our times, and definitely encourage you to get involved in some way or another. And so lastly, at Pran, we're thrilled to get the opportunity to rebuild our atmosphere, and we definitely invite you to join us on that mission. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Angad, for a fascinating presentation and inspiring one. I mean, at 24, I was kind of a lost soul. And here is a young man who's talking about an expansive vision and sharing insights that I told him during the break on people and so on that I learned to experience in my 40s. So, you know, hats off. Now, some of the lessons from Angad and Sandeep that I got interacting with them, and from my own experience in building Agastya, I was asked to share. I think one of them is think big. Now, big doesn't necessarily have to be scale. It could be a brilliant idea. You could write a book that has huge impact. That's thinking big. Or you can think in terms of scale and how you're going to transform your country or the world or whatever, right? So thinking big is important. And that requires energy, and that requires getting out of traditional ways of thinking. The second is, I found very important, have a magnetic vision and mission. If you can articulate your vision and mission in a way that captures the attention and energy of your people and of society at large, then that can have a magical effect. You know, Sandeep talks about making India the most advanced waste management ecosystem in the world. That's not too many words, but it's more memorable than a lot of corporate balance sheets where the chairperson talks about the vision and mission and you never remember what it is, right? So have a magnetic vision, and very important, because as your organizations grow bigger, you will experience what I call an exponential decay in vision. What you articulated will be very different from what the person in the front line is actually doing. And to arrest that, you'll have to come up with something that the people at the ground level, the janitor, can articulate what your vision is in his or her own way. So have a magnetic vision. Go to the tough terrain, as Sandeep would say. Go where no one's gone before. Tough, risky, but potential returns could be enormously high, because that's where you'll find a gap in the market. And then the question is there a market in the gap? And when both happen, then you have a star company. The next one, which Angad already spoke about, is that people matter. It's people that build companies. Nothing else. Everything else is important, but people is the key. You know, when I started Agastya in the early years, I went to see Dr. Kalam, who was President of India at the time, seeking his advice, and he said, Ramji, don't succumb to the Indian disease. And I said, what do you mean, sir? And he said, look, almost everyone wants an air-conditioned office, a computer, and I guess even then a cell phone. Now, you can't solve India's problems by sitting in an air-conditioned office and building an ivory tower. You have to go where the problem is. To use Sandeep's phrase, sit in the dump yard, because that's where you're going to find solutions to problems. So he told me, you've quit your job in London in banking, all the rest of it, to come back to India and to transform education in India and rural India. If you end up sitting in Bangalore in an air-conditioned office all the time, better you don't quit your job, please go back. I'll never forget that. And finally, you know, I think in one of the interviews that Angad gave to the press, he says, it's not activism that will change things for the better, but action. If there's one thing I've noticed in a lot of institutions and individuals around the country, it's a lack of a bias for action. May not have all the answers, but act. For God's sake, act. And act your way to thinking. Most of you, I'm sure, exemplify action or you wouldn't be here. But I'm talking about the larger ecosystem. Action. So I think that's what you're going to see in people like Angad, and what you're going to hear from Sandeep Singh. I call him the Abraham Lincoln of entrepreneurs, if for no other reason than the fact that he started his education in a village in UP under a lantern. I can't even begin to imagine what that might have been like. So, over to Sandeep.
Thank you, Ramji. We see waste everywhere, in landfills, getting burnt, leaching into water bodies. A very small portion of it reaches to the ocean. That itself is so huge that by 2050, total weight of plastic in ocean is going to be more than total weight of fishes. World generates almost 2 billion metric ton of municipal solid waste every year. And significant portion of it is not scientifically managed or processed. Most of the countries have started realizing this is the biggest problem humanity has created for itself. Almost 70% of the countries now have regulations, institutions, policy frameworks to oversee waste. But so far, we are very far. We are not able to contain the ecological and environmental damage of the waste. But if we look closer, this is a large pool of refined resources available to us. But we are not able to recycle and reuse it because it is in mixed form. The world operates in a linear manner. We take resources from nature earth, we process it, we use it, and we throw it. While there is significant amount of refined resources available in the thrown up waste. This is a big problem. Think about it. We are able to extract crude from thousands of meters below the earth. We are able to fractionate and create naphtha. We are using enormous amount of thermal energy to get to monomers. We are making plastic polymers out of it, which is available on the surface of earth, but we are not able to use it. This was our problem statement as a group of engineers. And in fact, for plastic industry, we are known as a group of mad engineers coming out of dump yard. We took this as a challenge. If you look closer, majority of this is plastic. The world consumes almost 370 million metric ton of plastic every year. The surface possibly has more than 5 billion metric tons of plastic available for us as a resource. But in order to use it, we need to segregate into different components. Almost 2/3 of plastic is consumed by brands alone. Consumer brands I'm talking about. It might sound very easy that consumer brands should have a complete circular consumption, but it is not. Because in order for these brands to adopt this recycled material, the recyclers should be able to produce the material which brands find suitable enough to adopt. 90% of the recycling done in the world is mechanical recycling. In order to produce good quality output from mechanical recycling, we need well-sorted input stream. And I'm not talking about polymer and color. We are talking about future. Food-grade separation, melt flow index-based separation, separating cosmetic bottles from oily bottles from pesticide bottles. None of the existing technologies provide answer to these challenges faced by the mechanical recycling industry. We, the group of mad engineers, took this as a challenge. In the last several years, we spent significant amount of our time working out of dump yard. We have built one of the largest waste classifier database in the world, and it is learning every day. We have created a machine vision which can identify recyclables on a very high speed. This belt is actually running at 4 meters per second. This is a slow-moving representation. Using this machine vision, we have created many automation tools. What you see on the screen is world's first AI-powered air sorter. Machine vision identifies the recyclables, and through our pneumatic valves, we separate these materials on a very, very high speed. This one single air sorter can segregate 6 tons per hour. This is completely made in India product. We are able to provide answers to the mechanical recycling industry, which they were looking for. The largest recycler of the country and only food-grade recycling company is already adopting our technology. Our machines are running in commercial environment with a track record of more than 2.5 years, with phenomenal results. Waste management industry now has a scalable, efficient, and economically viable solution to create material recovery facilities for the world. We are not only segregating the material, we are capturing a lot of information. People working in the waste industry would understand that there is no information layer available. With our technology, we are bridging that gap. We are creating an ecosystem. We are becoming a key part of creating that ecosystem where circularity trade can happen. And I'm talking about really big volumes, millions of tons of plastic alone, worth trillions of dollars in coming decade. And we will play an important role in creating the circular value chain. What you see on the screen is the world's most advanced material recovery system coming out of a dump yard of a tier 2 city in India. If I talk about what learning I would like to share with the entrepreneurs sitting here, creativity is a very difficult aspect to control. So if you have a big dream, you need to be focused about where to innovate. You need to be focused about your innovation. And second, be courageous enough to walk the tough terrain. A little bit of madness is always needed. Thank you.